7, so that you can kind of then start to reorientate yourself in how you can become part of the story. So we have got Steve Harding and James PB coming to share a little bit about what has happened over the last 25 years. You will see around the room a timeline that is pegged up, and our invitation today as we move through this morning is to encourage you to peg yourself into this story into the next 25 years. So we first wanted to just talk a little bit about what has happened. So my first question is for Steve. Steve, what happened 25 years ago? Why are we here today celebrating this story?
So, we're referring to the prayer room, the first prayer room here. So, who was around at that time? There's quite a few. Yeah.
Who was not born in 1999?
Who were the millennials?
Yeah, okay.
Well, we as a church were a lot of things, but one of the things we weren't was very good at prayer, I'd probably say. And so there was, Roger, you would know this story better. I kind of was just moving into the church. This is 25 years ago. Do have a bit of grace for me, because this is a different millennium. This is 1999, and so for the theologians, some hermeneutical work may need to be done on what I say, because it was such a long time ago. So from my memory, and please correct me if I'm wrong, people in the room who have been there, we were really poor we were particularly a student church to start with, and then the larger church also became very much part of what was going on. But we decided, instead of what's the least we can do, what's the most we could do? And so what was decided, I'm presuming it was Pete and Roger, Kerry, and Dan, you I'm sure were in the mix as well, said, well, let's just pray for 24 hours a day for an entire week. Which, that's an insane idea. It still feels a bit insane to me. But that's what we did. And for some reason, which we believe is the Holy Spirit, that caught on, and it became 1, 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 3 months? 3 months. Which it was not a small church, but that's a real commitment to a rhythm, and it started to bring people in. What was the question again?
What was it like being in that first prayer room? Like, had you ever prayed for an hour before? And what did it feel like being in that prayer room?
Yeah, so I remember some things about this first prayer room. So it was in a warehouse. So if you picture, this is a really good way of doing it. If you picture the Sistine Chapel, and then you completely invert that. That was what it was like. So it was the breeze block walls, about a room maybe a third the size of this, something like that. And I remember the site to start with, it was very, it got done up really well, but it was very kind of start-up. Again, don't picture the great painted ceilings. Picture a sheet pegged up and some post-it notes on the wall. And it gradually did evolve. Again, in terms of the sensory thing hit you, like in a Catholic church, you might have, or high church, you might have incense. Lynx Africa and body odor was the prevailing smell in this place.
Sounds so stunning.
Yeah.
Holy.
Yeah. So, lots to see, lots to interact with. I hadn't prayed in that way before, so yes, it was a new experience.
And so what has been the effect of that happening, that mad idea 25 years ago? What has been the effect, do you think, on Revs' prayer life since then?
Good question. People say that when they don't know what to say. Bad question, Lou. So I think for me, and with a little bit of hindsight, you know, in the time you may or may not know, is this God? This is kind of exciting. I don't really know what's happening. With some retrospect, I think the way that I would characterize it is God was creating a new imagination for prayer in our church and our generation. There's a new invitation, and it was very much in line with the kind of theology and idea that Roger and Pioneer and leadership at the time was really wanting to break down that sacred secular thing. And so the places, the holy places, often looked and smelt unlike some traditional holy places, and it was exactly. And so God's presence belongs not only, it's a yes and kind of thing, not only in the beauty of older buildings, which are, now we've really dug into that, but also in the squalor of our warehouse building on an industrial estate as well. That belongs. That's a holy place too.
Thanks, Steve. And I guess when we pray, it should, and hopefully does, propel us into doing something and becoming the answer to our prayers. And so, James, it very quickly started to not just be contained in Chester at Revs and started to spread out. And in 2001, you started something in Ibiza. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, and just for not to be annoying, but it was actually 2000 we went out for the first time.
Sorry,
that
James.
was a great year, actually. Just to pick up on what Steve said about sort of theology and such, like our thinking was in a place where God is everywhere, we can pray anywhere, but our body hadn't really caught up with that. Our head was somewhere, our imagination was somewhere, but yet, and we were as a movement that probably actually started, well, definitely started in the 70s and clearly was like, has been going for the last 2,000 years. We've been trying to figure out what it is to commune around this idea of sort of countercultural restoration and our words that you used before, renew. We've just celebrated Easter and all of that, resurrection, the sort of these eternal truths that are inherent in Scripture, and we knew these things, but in the year 2000, we were invited to go to Ibiza, and I say we, it's like a collective. This idea of praying for 24 hours a day for a week, and organize it, and then have a website, and then it was literally a movement, and I think it still is, isn't it? It's organized, it's orchestrated, but it's moving. So as part of that community that sort of, so by 1999, after those 3 months, people around the world had heard of it, because Roger did a lot, and a bunch of others, Dan and people in this room and other people as well, like they'd spent a lot of time investing in friendships, and friends know friends and friends know friends and such. So people in Spain heard about this idea, and they were like, "Oh, well, you need to come to Ibiza." And at that time in history, Ibiza had been, as an island off Spain, a Balearic island, had been in the media a lot and very negatively. Yeah, like the Sun had put on the front page, like, this island is Sodom and Gomorrah. And it's interesting that they'd use a biblical reference for that. But it was just like, there was this idea that God is everywhere, but there was this other idea that Ibiza was devoid of God. And so we were invited to Ibiza. So 4 of us went in 2000, and then we sort of, and that was ridiculous. If there is anywhere that I've been a few places, but if there is anywhere that there was a lot of God, it was Ibiza.
What do you mean by that? How?
I mean, like,
That's where Jesus would be, isn't it?
well, like, I mean, if anybody was here last Sunday, moments of last Sunday I thought were weird. It transcended my understanding, and I've been around church long enough to think, well, I'll just go with it and I'll see what happens. And I know Mark, and I like Mark, and I know Andrea, and I like Andrea, and they're going to lead us in a good way. But it was wild and it was weird, and I didn't really understand it. Our 10 days in Ibiza was just like there were people there from the hippie movement in the 70s. There were people there from there was all sorts of vagabonds there. Like it just and actually this you look at the Bible and you look at sort of the map in my Bible of where Jonah was told by God, oh, go to this place. And he went literally he got in a ship and went literally the opposite direction. I cannot back this up, maybe others could. I would not be surprised if he was heading to Ibiza. And you just look at it on a map, and it's like Ibiza has just always been this gathering point. It's always been part of the trade, the sailing, the sort of people would stop off there, pirates, modern day pirates. You kids are with us. And we were there. And we were right at home because normal people don't stay up all night praying. So we were like, we got there and people, and we went back and we went back and we went back. Like and we've still got back. We're organized in Ibiza now. Like, and we were not the first missionaries like that. We all know that. But some people were like, oh, you're the church. Why are you here in Ibiza? Why would you come to Ibiza? But then some others were just like, oh, you're as crazy as us. You're as radical as us. Like, we all stay up all night. We all party hard. We all so it just was really cool in dividing this line between, as somebody said earlier about sacred and secular. It was just like, oh, come on, let's get real. And also, like, the church mission hadn't been working out too well for young people either, had it? It was not like the church was really doing a great thing for young people. So it was a good experience in finding God in strange places where you think God won't be. God is very much there.
So you were part of the story kind of from the beginning, and what has being part of the 24/7 story meant in your life? Like, what has been the effect of you going to Ibiza and doing that and being part of the 24/7 prayer rooms? What's been the lasting effect on you?
On a personal level, it really is what I've just said about, like, well, God is everywhere. And that, if you can get that from your head to your heart and to your feet and to your hands, that's really quite transformative. It has been for me, of just like this practice, this sort of like the comfort of knowing that God is everywhere and interested. And if he's interested, if God is interested in me, God is interested in you. And if God is interested in you, God is interested in you and you and you and you and here and there and there and there. And that's kind of like we've just been abroad on holiday, and you just get off the plane, it's just like, yep, God's here, cool, let's carry on. It's not like life is less scary. Life's still scary, but it's so on a personal level, going to Ibiza where God was definitely not in Ibiza. Oh yeah, no, God's here. That's like, oh well, that's the extreme. There was nowhere more extreme at that time where God was, like, air quotes, not. And you go there and you have the ridiculous experience of God being there. And I don't know. We're on YouTube, aren't we?
Oh, it's embarrassing, yeah.
You can look it up. But do you want me to talk about my professional career now? Because that was planted, wasn't it? But so we went out really to sort of like not just Ibiza as an island, but also club culture as this sort of like dark space where people take drugs and it's really rebellious and whatever. So we went specifically to sort of serve in that and get familiar with that and see if God was there, and God really was there. And that just sort of like it just unfolded for me, really. And when I was like 15, personally, again, when I was like 15 on, I was really keen for my life to count for something and to be sort of, to have meaning. But knowing how to do that was really difficult and just got me really paranoid and like, oh, I've got to, like, how do I serve God? What does God want? But then it just sort of, Ibiza just really opened this thing up, and I was just like, oh, well, if God is into club culture, nightclubs, if that's a like the music here these times are wonderful, but I just found being in a nightclub actually more helpful for me to pray and worship and move and have my being, and so I was just like, well, if these are good for me, then maybe I could host that, maybe I could make more of that, or maybe I could influence that. And so started a club night with another friend who I met on a 24/7 team in Ibiza, and then we did that in Liverpool, and then that got me when I moved down here again, and got a job as an agent representing DJs, and now still working the scene, so making projects and all this sort of thing, trying to make a contribution to electronic or to youth culture and electronic arts. So.
That's amazing. So that was 2000. I had the privilege of meeting with the Ibiza team that are still there today. So there's still stuff happening there. Carla, do you want to fill us in on what's happening?
Yeah, when James and I first went out there, it was about let's set up a prayer room, let's pray through the night and day, and then let's just go be out particularly in San Antonio, this road called the West End, where there's about a mile of pubs and bars and things near the local clubs, and just be Jesus on the streets. And we saw incredible opportunities to pray with people, saw someone healed. Like, it was just phenomenal to just be Jesus and pray there. But since then, in 2005, Brian and Tracy Heasley moved out to Ibiza for a period of time, and they established like a permanent community on the island. And on the island, over the last 20 odd years, they've done things like continuing their work into San Antonio. They've got a permanent community center serving the community there. There was one magazine that called 24/7 Ibiza the fourth emergency service on the island.
They have a vomit bus?
They have a vomit van. Well, they had a vomit van for some of their seasons where they would scoop people up off the streets who were just off their faces and get them home to safety or to doctors, because you can imagine how vulnerable you are if you're that out of your mind on the streets of Ibiza. But they would also do things like visit people who come on holiday, broken the law and been sent to prison. And they go do prison visits to kind of be, I guess, almost like chaplains in the prison, but be Jesus in the prison. There's also a community in Ibiza town who are serving Ibiza town, and there's a beautiful Roma community there. They serve them as well. So the work's really grown. And the reason we want to mention it is if you, of any age in this room, but particularly talking to the students or those approaching a potential gap year, if you are interested, there is still ways to go and serve on the island of Ibiza, to be Jesus, to pray, to love that island and love the people there and share Jesus there. So if you Google 24/7 Ibiza, you will find it all.
So 24/7 went to Ibiza. At the same time, there was also mission trips to Russia and India, and people in this room went to those places, being the answer to their prayers. But I can often think like mission is to go overseas, but that's not the case. So what was happening here in terms of mission?
Well, I think we all know this in this room, but if you've spent any serious time praying and listening to God, you can't help but have him lead you to different things, like care about things he cares about, care about the places that you are each day, and you want to pray, and then you want to love those places. You want to become like an answer to prayer. And that's happened in lots and lots of different ways. How do we serve and bless our local communities? But one of the ways that's come up in the 27 movement, one of the starting points was, again, here in Chichester and here at Revs. After, I think it was 2008, after some time of us being used to praying in prayer rooms creatively night and day, a local secondary school reached out to us who was doing like an enrichment day around RE for year 10s. And they said, would you come, take a classroom, turn it into an example prayer room for our students, and then lead us through a day for year 10 on what is prayer, what do Christians think prayer is, and here you go, would you like to try it out in a classroom? So anybody here go to Bishop Laffer? Yeah, hey, and some of our kids are going to Laffer in September. So it was actually Bishop Laffer who invited us in to show their pupils this way of praying as Christians. I and some others went and set that up, and I was really surprised. And Laffer is a Christian school, so we were invited into that, but at the same time, other schools around the country were approaching local churches and saying the same thing. We've heard about this thing, 24/7 prayer. We'd love to teach our children, our school children, about prayer. Would you come set one up? And they could just take a look around and try praying if they like. Now, I have to be really honest with you guys. I thought that the year 10s would look around the room and maybe one or two would try praying. But I was utterly shocked at how many just dove into the prayer room and just tried praying. And that prayer room and the others that were happening around the nation at the time sparked a movement within the 24/7 prayer movement called prayer spaces in schools. And prayer spaces in schools look a lot like the prayer rooms you may have been part of here at Revs, but they are designed for children and teenagers of all faiths or none as a hospitable space to come and try praying. And oh my gosh, over 1 million children and young people have now been through a prayer space in school around the world and have had the opportunity to try praying, and the prayers are stunning. Stunning. But my particular favorites are from those who haven't been raised in a faith background. So they don't know faith language. They don't know how to write pretty prayers. So they write honest prayers. Oh, guys, it'll break your heart and fuel you to pray. They're teaching us to pray. And it's just been incredible. And it's one way the church, and we were part of the very beginning of this, is just serving its local community and serving our local schools. Here in the UK, for example, it's part of the national curriculum that schools have to look at the spirituality of children and offer them opportunities to explore that, so we can serve a local school by giving them one way to do that. And it's been such a privilege. So that's just one way, but there's been many ways as part of our story too, that praying has led us out of a prayer room and out of a building, maybe to an island or to a local club or to a school or to our local area or maybe just your street. Because when you pray, it should come with a danger warning. Because you do not stay in prayer, God moves you to become part of an answer to prayer for others. So that's why we talk about prayer, mission, and justice.
So then over the next decade, because 24/7 is a movement, it can't help but move and do new things and innovate and start things. So just to name check a few, 24/7 started the Vision course, which is training young people and giving them a really good grounding in theology and leadership. We've had people from the Vision course come and serve here and then be sent out. We developed the leadership training program. Anyone done the leadership training program here?
No. Hardings have gone out.
Hardings are gone. Some people have. I did it. There were prayer rooms in over 100 nations. Something called the Order of the Mustard Seed started. What is that?
Yes. The Order of the Mustard Seed is a community of people that took a vow, a very simple vow, which is actually just based on the core of the Christian faith. Jesus, when he was asked, said the most important commandments were to love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your strength. So the first vow is to be true to Christ, to love God with everything we've got. The second thing he said is, like this, he said, love your neighbor as yourself. So the second vow is to be kind to others. And we deliberately use the word kind because kind is challenging. Steve and I vowed to be kind to one another in our marriage vows, and we've constantly said... But we have constantly said it's the most challenging vow that we've experienced so far, to choose kindness. So kindness is an expression of loving our neighbors. And then the third vow is actually just taking seriously the Great Commission, where Jesus gathered his disciples and said, go, make disciples, baptize in the name of the Father, Son, and Spirit, spread this good news of who I am. So the third kind of vow is to bring the gospel to the nations, to love the world. And so some people felt that it would help them in their Christian faith to put some structure around those core ideas of the Christian faith. So they take a vow and they live by what we call a rule of life, where they have holy habits or practices that help them live this out. So they love God, or they're true to Christ, through prayer and expressing God's creativity. They love their neighbor through hospitality and justice. Where we see injustice, you can't love your neighbor unless you're tackling that injustice. And then they love the world and bring the gospel to the nations through mission and learning discipleship. So if you're interested in rules of life, you can feel free to come chat to us. But that is another little mini movement within the movement that has grown.
Yeah, which is growing phenomenally. And then just two other things that people sometimes don't realise are part of 24/7, or they think this is the only part of 24/7, is wildfires. Who's been to wildfires? Who's coming to wildfires this year? That was birthed out of 24/7. It's a partnership with a bunch of other people, but that was something that 24/7 have got behind. And lastly, Lectio 365 and Lectio for Family. So who is a lover of Lectio 365? So good. So all of these things have been birthed out of this movement of 24/7 prayer that started in this community 25 years ago.
Now, there's one other thing that's been birthed out of the movement that particularly Roger and Lou have given a lot of their lives to, and that we are a part of. You may notice that all the way through us talking about 24/7 Prayer Sunday, you could actually call this Revelation Church Sunday, because this is our story, and we have had the privilege of serving and being part of this story, and this is no exception. Within the 24/7 prayer movement, there is a family of communities that decided to group together to see one another as family, to be accountable to one another, to equip one another, and to live out the vision and values of being committed to prayer, mission, and justice. We call them the Communities Network. Lou, what kind of communities are in the Communities Network, and when did we join it?
So the Communities Network has got 3 different types of community. We have churches, houses of prayer, and missional communities. And on my last count, we had 97 communities across the globe who are just wanting to have friends for the journey, and we get to resource them, we get to encourage them, we get to pray for them, we get to bring some apostolic input into their communities, and really they get to bring who they are and take what they need from the rest of the network. Now, it's a bit of a funny one because really we were a 24/7 community right from the day we were born, because it came out of here. But we officially became a 24/7 community in 2019. So those of us that were at the gathering in Belfast got to be officially welcomed in, which was a funny thing because we were already 24/7 through and through. But that's what Roger and I do. That's our day-to-day life.
Pour your lives into.
Yeah.
And we're very blessed. We've had many people from the 24/7 movement that come and input into us as a church. So we've had the Westoffs, Chris and Craig and Nancy and Brian coming from the States to input into us. We also have Al Emerson from Northern Ireland who comes and inputs into us. And then many of our guys go and input into other churches as well. So yeah.
So that's kind of been the backstory. That's what, if you look around the room, you'll see the timeline pegged up of where 24/7 has been over the last 25 years. But that's not where it ends. We're not going to be like, great, we've done 25 years. What now?
That's a quarter century.
It's a quarter of a century.
Terrifying.
It is terrifying. And very exciting. But what is the invitation to us today, Carla?
We are part of this story, and this is God's story. We call this movement 24/7 prayer. But actually, sometimes I think that's unhelpful, because on the 5th of September 1999, as Steve described, when we started our first very basic, smelly prayer room as an experiment to find God in unexpected places, God also started 2 other night and day prayer movements on the same day in different parts of the world. This isn't ours, and this isn't our idea. This is something God is doing in the church. And I believe there has never been a time that I've been alive that the world hasn't needed praying Christians more, and Christians who are willing to become answers to prayer for others more. So the invitation to you is, we're not done yet. God is not done yet. You have the opportunity, if you've never prayed and you find prayer difficult, come and learn. 24/7 Prayer has a ton of resources to help you. This church has a ton of people who can mentor you and give you ideas. Come and learn and find out what adventure God's going to send you on, whether it's a new imagination for what prayer could be or where you could discover God, or whether it's your entire career, basically, got set by the direction of taking a chance and going to a newspaper called Sodom and Gomorrah, and discovering God was there. And that set the direction of James's life. Or like me, someone who wandered into the first prayer room terrified because I couldn't pray, and my entire life has changed direction from encountering God in that space. So come and learn to pray. We can help. And as a community, we've had words like Sarah shared a word earlier this year that God is inviting us into a new season of mess in the Holy Spirit, creative mess in the Holy Spirit. And I feel like for me, God also spoke to me about this is a time to wrestle. So I think now is the time to step up and recommit ourselves to prayer, to the Spirit leading us, even if it's not as we expect. So come and learn. And then the other thing I would say is, if you want to find out more about 24/7, you can always talk to me or Lou or Roger or Dan or anyone. But you could also come and join us in Rotterdam this August. This August? October. August is wildfires. You can also come to that. But this October, we're celebrating 25 years of night and day prayer, mission, and justice in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. Lots of cheese. It's going to be great. So if you want to come and pray and celebrate and listen to God together, come and join him.
So we're going to have an opportunity to pray now because we've talked enough. We actually want to do what we're here to do, which is to pray. So Carla, do you want to just quickly explain the different stations?
Absolutely. So around the room, there are 3 different prayer stations. I'm going to pray about 3 different things. Now, if you're here with other people, I'd recommend you go around them together and pray with one another, but you can go around them on your own if you prefer. In the back corner, just over there, we're going to pray for Chichester District. God has been putting on the hearts of the leaders and us here as a community that we've been put on this geography for a reason. We want to be an answer to prayer in this region. So we've got a little prayer station over there to help us think about how are we walking our local neighborhoods in this district with the intention of carrying the presence of God into it. So go pray for the street you live in and the neighborhood you live in over there. There's instructions around it. Down here, we want to pray for the children and youth in our church. 24/7 prayer is for everyone, but we have a particular bias to see children and youth really experience the presence of God and see where God guides them in their lives. So over there, we're going to pray about them being built up in their faith. If you are in the younger generations in this room, get over there, build something, pray for what you want in your life with God and over your friends. But that's that side. And then this side is something to pray about and take away. Come on in, guys. You're really welcome. It's for us to pray for our own walks with Jesus and our own prayer life. You have a candle. Please don't light it in this room. Andy will kill me. But it's for you to take home. And every day this week, I want to invite you to pause and pray with God. There's a Bible verse and a candle. Light your candle and ask God to awaken in you a passion for his presence and prayer that you need igniting in your life. So praying for yourself and your prayer life. Praying for our children and young people. Praying for our neighborhoods. Parents, scoop up your children and include them. These are children-friendly prayer stations. We're going to spend about 5 to 10 minutes. You might not get through all of them, but they'll be here after the service as well. Let's go.